It is a beautiful day today, but I have to talk to you about something that's extremely important. You have to watch this video from start to finish, and by all means, please share. I have a special guest with me today. We're going to be talking about something, but before I bring him on, I want to tell you why I'm making this video and why it's so important to me for you to watch this whole video. As I was traveling back from California, 2,300 miles to Knoxville, Tennessee. I was on a motorcycle, of course. There was a lot of road hazards on the road, all kinds of things that was completely dangerous for motorcycles. So it got me to thinking about something about how motorcycle riders don't get treated like people in cars. Is our life have less value than someone in a car? As I was riding down the road, I was looking at the guardrails, and I was paying attention to the guardrails that had the 3 cables. And I thought, if I were to come off of this motorcycle and go into one of those guardrails, what is that 3-wire guardrail going to do to my body? I kept thinking there's something that needs to be done. Somebody has to say something about this. But as long as nobody's talking about it, nobody's going to change anything. So let's get into the video.
Traveling Tall is brought to you by Custom Dynamics, Zippers Performance, Chromeworks, Red Line Oil, Volunteer Audio, and Let's Roll.
We about to ride, you about to ride.
All right, guys, so I have Steve with me. Steve, thanks
Nice to meet you, Tal.
Nice to meet you. We've talked on the phone a couple times, and now we're here. What we talked about, we're actually going to share with them, and I think it's very important. So, Steve, you want to tell them who you are and what you do?
My name's Steve Eimers. I'm the guardrail guy. I'm a guy from rural East Tennessee with 10 kids, about 30 chickens, depending on if we've got any raccoons or foxes in the hen house, and 3 goats. And I didn't know a thing about guardrails until November 1st, 2016. And that's when my 17-year-old daughter, my oldest child, went off the left side of the road in McMinn County, Tennessee, and hit a guardrail, and it speared into the passenger compartment, causing catastrophic, horrific injuries that killed her instantly. And I started asking questions. I discovered things about the guardrail industry, guardrail oversight, and what was occurring on our nation's roadways that was shocking. I took that information, and what started off as just a couple of questions ended up in testifying before state houses, legislative bodies. I got state and federal laws passed. I've probably gotten somewhere between $100 and $200 million worth of guardrails replaced with safer products.
Right. So you took a horrible situation, and you brought something positive out of it by getting these laws passed of the people that travel these roads without knowing the dangers of these guardrails.
What happened in Hannah's case was evil, but in all things, it can work for good. It will never be good what happened,
right?
But good can come out of it.
You know, most of you guys know, if this is your first time coming to the channel, this is a motorcycle channel. We do some things non-motorcycle related, but for the most part, it's a motorcycle channel. And I was talking about those guardrails with the 3 cables.
Let me pull over a couple papers. Motorcycles make up about 3% of our nation's vehicle fleet. We go up here to the bridge, and we just have a counter, and we count 100 vehicles go by us. About 3 of them are going to be somebody like yourself on a bike.
Right.
I worked in EMS. My brothers are all firefighters in Fairfax County, Virginia. When they pull up on a guardrail crash and there's a death involved, 30% of the time it's going to involve somebody on a bike. That is 10 times what you would expect. If they were killed at the same rate the traveling public is killed in crashes involving guardrail, you would expect far fewer. Most bikes are not ridden in December, January, or February, or March. The worst guardrail crashes often occur at night or in horrible weather. Times when motorcyclists are often not on the road at the same rates as the traveling public. That 30% is actually far worse because they're not traveling. They often will travel in a motor vehicle or a truck or something else a large percentage of the time, and this is an astonishing number. And so for me, like once I started monitoring guardrail crashes, I just wasn't prepared for what I found. I tell people I hate May, June, July, and August as a guardrail safety advocate because I open up my Google alerts and anywhere from 5 to 10 people, somebody created in God's image who has inherent transcendent value, has been killed in a crash involving a safety product, and they were on a motorcycle. And so like if you talked about your cable barrier, what we would expect if you interacted with that cable barrier, we're gonna literally, we often talk about when we have a loss, we're gonna have to pick up the pieces. We're gonna literally pick up the pieces here.
That's a vehicle.
Yes.
That provides me transportation. When someone who's designing the road and they're designing the safety features on the road, are they really taking that into account that, hey, some people are traveling on the two-wheel vehicles? It seems like everything is more geared toward cars and nobody's looking out for the safety of motorcycles. Now, guys, I don't want to be, listen, I know when I get on a motorcycle, it's a bigger risk than driving a car. I know that. I understand that. But all I'm saying is, who's ever designing the road and the safety barriers, let's take it into consideration that everybody's not in an automobile. Some people are on motorcycles. And if there's something that you can do, maybe a design or something that you can change to make it safer, you don't have to, I know it will never be as safe as a car.
No.
But safer for us as motorcycle riders, then someone ought to look into it and try. So Steve, I'm asking you this. Is there anything that they can do to make guardrails safer for motorcycles?
It's going to be really hard. We did talk about the cable barrier. One thing I would say is on a bike, you are enjoying, at least with center median barriers such as a W-beam guardrail, that if you hit on a bike, there's a high probability you're going to die. Cable barrier, there's an extraordinarily high chance you're going to die. But it is protecting you from a crossover hit, somebody coming across and hitting you. But it's going to be a tough thing. You can't fix a problem when you have not even tested for it yet.
Right.
And so one of the first things we need to do, and these tests are going to be ugly, is we need, when the new MASH testing standards, this is what it's called, is MASH, Manual for Assessing Safety Hardware, is published, we desperately need it to include a crash test involving a motorcycle or even a motorcyclist, a cadaver or a dummy. Because if we don't start studying it, we don't have a target to hit, we're never going to do it. So we're in Florida, and I get this picture of a guardrail, and they say, what do you think of it? And I take a look at it, and I'm like, well, it looks okay. I would prefer having an anchor. And finally I say, well, what's it there for? Because guardrail is first and foremost always a hazard.
Right.
You only install it when there's a greater hazard behind it. And the guy said, thanks for asking. He said, a guy on a bike went down, he was sliding along the road, and he hit one of the posts, and he was killed. And he said, go to Google Street View and back it up. There was a sign there that would have indicated the need for a guardrail, but they removed the sign and left the guardrail. So the first thing we really need to be doing is looking at do we need the subject guardrail at that location. One of the things I saw recently in Alabama, and cheers to Alabama DOT, every inch of guardrail is only a hazard to motorcyclists. So on the trailing end of their bridges, on the interstates, they removed the trailing end guardrail because it wasn't indicated. It was probably only 50 to 100 feet of guardrail per location, but when you add that up, statistically, at some point, we're going to save a motorcyclist's life. They have inherent
from
value.
unnecessary guardrails. So some
Yeah,
of the
so
guardrails
the
are
first
not-
thing we need to do is make sure it's necessary.
Right.
You know, I worked EMS. You pull up to a scene, there's you and one other person, and there's 12 victims. You're going to have to, as the designer of the site, as the critical incident commander, you're going to make calls that may prioritize one life over another. And that's a really, really difficult thing to do. But like when we have a road like the Dragon,
Yeah.
we know who our priority user is on the Dragon. There's a number of guardrails on the Dragon that I'm telling you, I would take out if I'm not an engineer and I'm not the designer or owner of that road. I mean, it's a unique road with a ton of motorcyclists, so I would prioritize, if it was me, that user in that situation, because I think that guardrail is probably more likely to kill a motorcyclist than save a motorist. So, you know, there's a location here where it's hard. It's hard because I mean I'm like there, and one of the guy's friends shows up and he's putting up a roadside memorial. It involved a motorcyclist. It's a location where I look at it and say, hey, we have to have the guardrail there because of the hazard is too great.
Right.
But there's solutions that, you know, I've seen used in Europe. I've seen the same solution used in North Carolina. One of the things we have to look at is how the body is interacting. It's guardrail posts that are often killing the motorcyclist. We have certain roads here where we know a lot of out-of-town folks travel. They're going up into the Smokies. They're going to the Dragon. We could use countermeasures like rub rail to keep you from interacting with the guardrail. I mean, it's gonna be a bad day. It is going to be a bad day. You might get flown on a helicopter.
That's better than.
But that's better than being buried and carried by six. I have a list here. It comes from FARS. It's from NHTSA. Read that number right there, right down at the bottom.
4,325.
4,325 fatal crashes into roadside safety barrier, whether it was cable, W-beam guardrail, or concrete barrier, or bridge rail, some kind of safety barrier. That's the number of motorcyclists that have been killed since 2007. And this data, it's the best data available, but it's extraordinarily compromised. If we could cut that number by 10%, we're talking about over 400 people that are still alive today. That's worth fighting for, and that's worth saving. When MASH is published by AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, this next time, it needs to have a crash test for guardrail. We cannot just simply say, those guys on motorcyclists, we are writing them off.
Yeah.
That is insane. That is not American.
Guys, this is staggering. You see this number here, and I want to say this, because I know sometimes when you see a YouTube video, people will take a small piece and run one way or the other with it. This is what I'm doing this for. I want to make sure that motorcycles are taken into consideration when people are doing projects on the road. Safety barriers, road construction, roads in general. I want to make sure that motorcyclists are given the same respect as cars. That's all that I'm doing this for. There's not really a solution yet, right?
There's some solutions. Some of the things, like one of the crashes I told you about in East Tennessee here, it was in a very deadly S-curve. This was an out-of-town motorcyclist, so he wasn't familiar with the area.
Yeah.
One of the things that we can do to protect motorcyclists, it's not going to be a huge project, is proper signage. Put up a sign that warns that there's a curve ahead.
Yeah.
You know, this one location that's had 3 serious motorcycle crashes, one of them a fatality. I recently got 12 signs with curves that weren't for the curve that had blown down, put back up. It's a start. We can use rub rails. We can use, one of the concerns at this location is there's a dip in the road. The drains at this location are clogged, creating standing water. It's hard enough on a 4-wheel vehicle when there's water on the roadway to maintain control. When you got loose 2 wheels and now you're on a bike, so it could be as simple as state DOTs prioritizing, let's unclog the drain. The reality is, unclogging drains and preventing the motorcycle crash could be the key. It's going to take a whole number of factors. It's going to take agency on behalf of bikes. One, advocating for, hey, we are out there. We want to be included in this testing. We have billions of dollars that have been spent on roadside safety barrier.
I want to make it home at the end of the day, just like any car rider wants to make it home at the end of the day. We deserve safe road conditions, and we need to be taken into consideration when they're making new safety barriers and new safety plans and road conditions for motorcycles. I'll say this, you was talking about the drains, you was talking about the standing water. I was in Texas and I was going down the road, and all of a sudden the road just cut out, and there was about 20 feet of gravel on a road. They had dug up the road, and the temporary fix was just to put the gravel there. I'm on a motorcycle running 55 miles per hour. It could have turned out really bad. You have the interstate and they're doing construction, and the grooves, which riders who've been riding for a while, that doesn't bother them, but the grooves will shake your motorcycle a little bit back and forth when you're riding. There shouldn't be times that I'm riding and traveling, guys, and I'm riding 15, 20 miles on a grooved road. There should be a limit to how far they can tear up the road when they're doing construction, or at least leave one lane intact and let the other lane be grooved. No one is thinking about us on these motorcycles.
Well, honestly, I don't ride. We were talking about the dip in the road, and you pointed out 6 of them to me. Canadian province, one of these senior officials, he lost a loved one in a crash. He's one of the most understanding and proactive DOT leaders in North America. We need folks like that. We need folks that ride bikes in our leadership, because, so we have a 15-mile project. We're going to do 3-mile increments versus 15 miles because we don't even know that's a problem. Getting engineers into key positions that also ride bikes, getting engineers into key positions who come from, just various different ways of thinking, because I had no idea what you just said. To me, it's just tear it all up and get it over with.
Going that way, Mississippi Parkway, there's several bridge seams. You go over on a car, you're not paying attention to that. But where the bridge meets with the road, sometimes the road is raised or the bridge is raised, and you're riding around on your motorcycles. All of a sudden, you come up off the seat because you've hit a huge step up like that.
Yeah.
There's one right in front of the new signal when you're going around, you're merging from Alcoa Highway to the interstate. Right in the curve, there's a huge seam, and you're in a lean on a motorcycle, and you hit the little step up, and it unsettles your bike.
I saw a Honda Goldwing that went down there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was not injured. They weren't injured, but luck is not a safety strategy.
No, that's right.
And one of the things, you have a lot of viewers. They're out on the road. They're out on a bike. One of the things they can do is when they find these locations, go to the DOT website or the owner of that road and let them know that, hey, listen, here is this. Explain to them exactly what that dip in the road at the New Sentinel does to you as a motorcyclist. They may not even realize that it's impossible to know what you do not know. Yeah. I don't ride a bike, so I don't know 90% of the hazards. I know to be alert for left in fronts, but I know to keep an eye out, but I don't know the hazards you face on a daily basis. So
First, you have to acknowledge there is a problem before anybody even fixes the problem. So there's a problem.
there's an NCHRP report project. I think I got it here. It's 2260, and it's looking into what crashed. I mean, are we going to run a motorcycle crash test with guardrail? I'm going to start a petition that yes, we need a motorcycle crash test with guardrail. It needs to be included in the next edition of the Manual for Assessing Safety Hardware. It absolutely has to. We cannot ignore 30% of the deaths another day. It's got to stop. It's got to stop.